Well, probably most of you right now have talked about sort of the different type of kind of representation that you guys would be doing compared to the SABs, but where do you draw this sort of line or distinction? How would you decide if something's sort of appropriate, relevant for you to bring up as a student trustee, or to sort of whether it should be going through other channels like the SABs and the officers?
Adam, then Lauren.
To be honest, I think, I'm slightly hesitant to say this, but I think things shouldn't be going through the trustee board unless they have to be. I think if things can be dealt with through other ways and it's not going to be detrimental to the union, then that's the best way to do it, because in a lot of ways the trustees are the least accountable body in the union. I mean, they report once a year, whereas the trustees report every council meeting. Council is accountable to itself in a way. So, anyway, so I think where necessary it goes to the trustees, but otherwise it should be dealt with by the sabbatical officers or council.
I think the way I see it, the SABs do an excellent job of like political and everyday running of the DSU, of getting your views and stuff that happens, that matters to you daily. But I think the really big stuff, like the legal, the financial stuff, the stuff that really, really shapes the direction and has a massive impact on what the union does. Not like the everyday stuff and not the political stuff, because we have like the upcoming NUS referendum is a really good example of where the SABs have like come into their own and organised that. I think it's stuff like the legal, the political, like the legal, sorry, and the financial that we would be dealing with, and I think that it's very important that we keep those two roles separate, because at the end of the day we're elected for very different jobs.
I think the key thing is to be very aware of what's going on within the organisation. So if someone does come to me and says, oh, I'm not happy that I had to pay this much for a drink, then it's important that I understand what's going on in this so that I can direct them to the right member of our staff, for instance, or to the events forum to give their view. If someone came to me with something that clearly falls under the remit of one of the SABs, so there was a societies query, I'd direct them to Ben, because I know that's what Ben does and that's where it should go to. If there was something that was clearly a strategic matter or something which I know falls under the remit of the board, then that's something that I'd then email around the board and get their opinion on.
Yeah, I mean, I really hate to use this word, but a sort of the business side, I don't see the DSU as a business, but if that makes sense, like the sort of more sides that make it run properly, the stuff that doesn't make sure it doesn't go bankrupt, basically, as everyone said, the financial and legal sides. I mean, I've worked really closely with the SABs this year, particularly with Nikki being education officer. So, and I do know just how busy they are with like the sort of political stuff, like what we want from the university itself, like so in education, you know, all that feedback and things like that. And then of course, you know, the president was dealing with the BMP, the debate about that, for example. And I think actually it's good that the trustees just focus on the more practical sides of the DSU, literally make sure that it's running well, and that, you know, that the aspects of it that make money, that use money and things like that are actually being used properly for the students. And I think actually it would work quite nicely. And I, you know, having experience of what the SABs do, I think those actually work quite nicely together.
Very similar, again, I'm on the end on this one. But yeah, there's two different defined roles. The SABs obviously have all their areas to deal with, and we're on the sort of businessy side of things here. The more public we make ourselves, though, the more people that could be approaching us. So it's a key to just knowing exactly how everything in the union runs, and direct people if need be, and then just help where we can.
Excellent. Any other questions, guys?
Okay, say you're in a trustee board meeting and there's a suggestion on the table which you think students wouldn't be 100% behind, but it ensures the financial viability of DSU. How do you vote? Do you vote in favour or not?
Can we start with Joe and then move to Andrew now?
Very good question. At the end of the day, we need a students' union here, and if we're risking the students' union, unfortunately, as horrible as it may be, I think the key to any business really is to make sure the foundations are there. I wouldn't jeopardise the union, I'm afraid, for any one service, if that was the consensus though of the whole group, because obviously it'd be a mixed bag of sort of opinions, but my personal view is we still need the union, so we'd have to keep it.
I mean, yeah, a depleted union, I think it's still better than no union. So, I mean, I think, you know, if it really was that dramatic, I would, you know, obviously vote to keep the DSU going. But I mean, if perhaps a slightly more moderate version, I would see perhaps if we could delay a decision, if there was time permitting, to see what the students would feel on that. You know, we would have to explain the facts in really hard, cold reality, and make sure they realise it's, you know, you either accept this or the DSU loses tons of money, and perhaps students will be a bit more willing. But just see if actually the students do understand that. But in your rather dramatic situation, I would keep the DSU, of course.
Yeah, same idea again. If obviously we need to keep the students' union, if we have to make a decision that in the short term isn't completely beneficial to students, then that has to be done. But in all honesty, I've not come across a scenario where there isn't some kind of compromise we can make. I think there's always something we can do where we can ensure the viability of the union while keeping students' interests to the forefront.
I'd see my role there as just really making sure that the other members of the board understood what students' concerns would be, and that we discussed every other avenue, every possibility, to make sure that the students would ultimately be getting the best deal. And if the students keeping the union would be the best deal, then you would have elected me to ensure the legal and the financial stability of the union. And that's what I'd have to go for, because that's the mandate that you've given me, to make sure that the students' union is still around this time next year. So that's what I'd have to vote for.
Yeah, I mean, as everyone said, I think the first goal is to ensure the legal and financial stability of the union. And to be honest, I think while people may not be 100% behind this decision, I think ultimately it is still in their interest for us to make the decision which ensures stability of the union, because otherwise they may not have a union, which isn't really in many people's interest, I don't think.
Okay, cool. We've got time for about one, possibly two more questions. Have any else, please?
The charitable objects of our union listed in the Constitution are central to the ethos of DSU. Can you please name as many as you can, or list as many as you can?
I'm going to start with Andrew and move round again.
I don't know explicitly what it says in the Constitution, but I mean, as far as I know, they are to promote is it the well-being, or is a word like that? Perhaps yes, well-being. Well-being of students and sort of student development of students.
No, it's
I can't quote any back at you. I've had a look at the Constitution in the past couple of weeks, and it's not the nicest of documents to read. So I can't on that one, I'm afraid, without reference into it.
As Andrew said, there's one about welfare or well-being or something. I think there's one about representation, furthering the interests of students.
Okay, I can't quote the Constitution at you. I'm not going to lie or pretend on that one. But I'm going to say what I think that the DSU does for us that would fulfil the charitable objectives. So I think that it represents us at every level that it needs to be. It takes our views forward. With the welfare officer, it ensures our well-being has been said. It helps students to get involved via DUC. It helps us to develop, and it helps us to give back to the community, as well as take learning from it.
Well, I think as our time together with the Constitution game demonstrated, I'm no expert. But I was asked this exact same question at Hustings last year, and I couldn't answer then, and I'm in the same position now. And the reason why I am is, in our day-to-day decisions, the charitable objects are important, but we're there looking out for the needs of students. And as long as we have the needs within our mind, that we can refer to the Constitution if necessary, then I think that's all that's necessary.